Hey everybody! Welcome to the first full official episode of Black Joy, your cultural happy hour. All of these things I have found brought me a little piece of joy, and I think hopefully they will bring some to you too. So, first up, you would think, who wants to review a podcast on a podcast? Me. So the podcast that I'm referencing today is called Thirst Aid Kit. Now, Thirst Aid Kit started out on, I want to say it was BuzzFeed, but, BuzzFeed has like this really not great track record with their pods. And I want to say like they went through a whole thing and all of them got canceled, and there's just been a lot of BuzzFeed drama, which is typical for BuzzFeed. But that said, Thirst Aid Kit was one of those things that got canceled. Luckily, it got picked up by another podcasting company or media house, and it is so fun and funny and actually informative. This episode that brought me a little bit of joy is the one with Jason Mantzoukas. He's a comedian, actor. You've probably seen him in lots of things. If you listen to the podcast, How Did This Get Made? Again, another podcast reference. How strange on your own podcast, but just ride this wave. Oh, R.I.P. Brittany Murphy. This episode of Thirst Aid Kit, Jason Mantzoukas was on, and it was really fun. And the thing that made me want to add this particular episode to our episode of Black Joy is there was like girly giggly laugh time. And during this whole pandemic, one of the things I truly think we miss is the opportunity to really like kick it and pal around with our friends. And yeah, we like do our Zoom happy hours and we try to like text more and we're FaceTiming and we're doing all of these things. And it's a great effort. Thumbs up, everyone. Everyone, thumbs up for trying to keep sane. But it's not the same. It's just not the same. And we have to adjust because it's going to be this way for a while if we want to be safe. I.e., Dr. Fauci said we're going to be here a minute, and I trust his science. He's been through a pandemic before. I haven't. We really have to find like how we can dig in and embrace it and just enjoy it as much as we can, which is good. But giggly girly laughy time is not the same. And on this particular episode, one, Bim shot her shot, and I was not mad about it. And I'm really rooting for her. And I hope that something happens between her and Jason Mantzoukas because it was really cute. Even if it was a bit, they sold me on it. And besides that, it also was just nice to hear the like giggles and they're like hee hee and oh my god and ah. It's not a thing that you do on your own if you're sane, except for just now when I just did it, but I was really performing. It was a performative girly giggly. But that just like key time with your crew where you guys are just laughing, and it was so happy. And I thought, oh my gosh, I miss that. We don't get that in the same way anymore. And so just hearing them like laugh and giggle like that was so, it just made me so happy. I like had to write it down even before I knew that it would be a thing that I talked about on Black Joy. It just made me happy, and I was giggling along with them. And I think that's really like, it's contagious. Joy is a contagious thing. It cannot be contained. And they're not in denial. So they're not talking as if, we're not living in a pandemic. Like, that is the background, the atmosphere for the podcast, because it's all of our lives. It's the background of our lives. Oh, almost like cotton, the fabric of our lives. But this podcast still sat and grounded itself in that bit of truth, but from that truth there was so much humor because it's hilarious. Like, it's completely absurd where we're at, and like not only where we're at in terms of like fires and disease and all of that, but like leadership. Also, you have to have days where you just think this can't be real. And you gotta laugh a little bit. Like, it is truly absurd. So it's nice to embrace and to be entertained by people who understand the complete absurdity of the situation and then somehow take you to another place where you may not be able to have that giggly girly haha laugh time with your girls, but they're creating a little space for you to have it with them. It's a plus. Highly recommend. My book recommendation is The Warmth of Other Suns. I'm not gonna lie to you all. It's not like, oh, I just read this book yesterday. Like, I have not reread this book. It's a thick one. Look at that. I'm not about to reread this for y'all real quick for the podcast. Like, I love y'all, but that's not on the menu. But The Warmth of Other Suns. It's so good. If you know me, I have recommended this book to you. I know I have. Oh, Sherry, I don't know you that well. I've recommended this book. You have seen me post about this book. In conversation, I have given this book as a book that everyone should read. I love this book. It's brilliant. Like, Isabel Wilkerson. Words. Isabel Wilkerson she actually does a really beautiful job of creating a narrative out of real non-fiction, thus real, stories of regular folks living their lives. And you think it's going to be like, I heard about this book thinking it was some sort of fiction or something because people were just like, so good, it's the story of these 3 black people. And I'm like, you hear story of 3 black people, you don't think nonfiction. You think someone has created a story out of their mind, imagination, and created it for us. But no, she made a narrative out of the lives of 3 Black Americans. And in her narrative, you get you get information about the world. And I think that's one of the interesting things about her work, is that it's not just history. Because I think that's how most of us view history, as it's the past. And people say, oh, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. But it's more than that. Like, these are actually people's lives. If you consider our lives today, at this moment, this is historical. Like, we're living in the middle of historical times. And 75 years from now, somebody is going to want a book like this. They don't care what their history book says. It's going to be boring and watered down. But the narrative, someone taking the lives of 5 people across this country during this time and weaving it together to tell the story of the country and people experiencing this pandemic, on top of, again, the fires and, it's just famine, disease, name it, we got it. But that's what's going to be able to help people understand our lives then. I mean, you're just living your life. Now you're not like, oh, one day someone will write this tale about my life. Okay, I know some of you are thinking, actually, yes, that is what I think. And we are few in number and really should be. That's not a normal way to think. We can't be like that every day. But even in your wildest dreams of that, the reality is eventually one day no one's gonna remember, and that's okay. That's just like life. But it's nice to know that there are really smart people who can create works out of the lives of regular folks going to work every day, living their lives and raising their families and taking care of their plants. Those people's lives can create a beautiful portrait of what it's like to live at a particular time. And it's something that you need and that people will need in the future for sure in order to really grasp how we land in certain situations and hopefully learn how to not ever get back in them again once you're out. So, The Warmth of Other Suns. Also, wait, I'm not done. Who am I kidding? If you know me, again, you know that I could talk about this book for hours. But it's also a great book because it has the ability to bring you a little bit closer to your own history. When I was finished with this book, I had a new admiration for my grandparents, for their siblings, for my parents as first generation kids, like after the Great Migration. Like, they were the ones who had to grow up in integration in a completely different way than maybe what my grandparents would have imagined. And so it did help me get a better understanding of my own history and my community. I had a greater interest in what Columbus was like, knowing that there were Black people who were there before my family. That is why this book is important. It's important, and it brings joy, because in the midst of all of our troubles and struggles, you see, we always keep on trucking. I would be remiss if I did not bring up the gift that Verses gave to us. We did not deserve, we do not deserve, and yet we were given. The Miss Gladys Knight versus Miss Patti LaBelle Verses was iconic, legendary. They gave us memories. I mean, first of all, the longevity of their careers. Second of all, I went to a school for this, and I know people who could never do that at 20, let alone 77. Like the pipes. And if there's anything that brings me joy, like to think that we are walking in the footsteps of absolute greatness. When you compare, the stories that are in The Warmth of Other Suns, and you take that and you lift that up and you consider the music that was the background for the journey of those people, the soundtracks of their lives, if you will. I just was in the mood yesterday to listen to, after listening to the full cheat sheet that Apple Music puts up of all their music back to back, which that's not, the cheat sheet didn't completely reflect what was played, but we're okay with that because Miss Gladys did say, I'm not singing in those keys. And I think maybe but most of the song she was singing in the keys. It's wild. Whatever. That's not the point. But then I went from that to, let me go ahead and listen to Brandy and Monica's cheat sheet while we're at it. And I was like, wow, you can see the legacy. You can hear it. I'm not saying those two are those two. I'm not comparing them as being the exact next generations, or definitely 2 generations later. That's not what I'm saying. But the idea of what they bring, and to go and listen to that, and then I threw on some Chloe and Halle, and honestly, I thought, it's not over. It may feel like it. But you gotta look for who can give you a ballad, okay? Who can give you a ballad? Everyone thinks it's an up-tempo, and yeah, yes, but can you breathe? Do you have breath control? Okay? Because Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle were sitting in their chairs, y'all. Sitting in their chairs, giving us notes. So, that was my Black Joy. And Dionne Warwick popping out. Dionne. Talk about original pop princess. Dionne was here giving like crossover, truly ahead of the game. Quiet as it's kept. Dare I say, no Dionne, no Beyonce. Somebody had to cross over. It had to be somebody. Think about it. We got a lot of joy. A lot of Black joy. Just, like our folks who came before us. These women were out there giving them notes and giving them music and uplifting them. And, you know, in the midst of our collective abuse and oppression. And here we are today, and they still were able to give us that moment. Us, generations later, they still were able to give us that bit of happiness, peace, lifting of spirits. Same songs that they did back then. But they, in the midst of all our trauma and oppression, still being the background music, the soundtrack to our lives. And also they gave us great music for soundtracks. Come on, License to Kill? Come on! Black joy. Black joy. So everyone, this has been our first full episode. You guys are the lucky bunch who are going to be on this ride from the very beginning. I hope you guys have a great week. You take care of yourselves. You sit back. You drink your water. Have some tea. Give yourself a mask. Wash your hair. Brush your teeth. Wash your face. Moisturize. Shower. I know these seem like simple things to do every day, but sometimes things are hard and you're just like, I don't feel like doing nothing. And sure, that might be good for a day, maybe two, but we can't stay in it. If you stay in the funk, you eventually become funky. You don't want that. You don't want that for yourself. I don't want that for you. So, do what you can. Practice self-care. The fun type, like lipstick and earrings, and the more challenging type, like paying your bills on time. And at the end of the day, have a little black joy. Cheers.